And welcome to Candidates Corner on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Bilyeu is serving as chair. As always, tonight we'll have John Gabso on the big board. He'll bring you the infotainment, the graphics, the fun. I'm your host, Pat Ford. There are a few purposes every week that we say for this show. We want to give the libertarian community opportunity to meet their candidates, from water board to town council. And in tonight's conversation, two candidates running a rather, by today's standards, unusual race to gain the, the nomination for the United States Senate from the Indiana Libertarian Party. We want to challenge them to incorporate what we call lunch pail issues from today's news, from today's concerns, from their constituencies, into a conversation about that issue that's best viewed through a libertarian perspective. As we say every week, with love, I enjoy and support Austrian economics. It is fair to say, however, that a great deal of the Indiana electorate has no idea about any of this. And while it's important to us, it's also important for us to frame our movement, our philosophy, our statement of principles, our platform in a perspective that's approachable and accessible by the electorate. Sadly, we're not at a point yet where there are enough libertarians who can just elect us out of hand. We have to appeal to voters of virtually every stripe. And while there's no need or desire to shortchange our principles, our belief system, we do need to be able to explain it to, if you will, folks from other backgrounds, other political perspectives. Finally, we want to create this bond, this recognition that libertarian candidates, in the case of tonight, running from Indiana, are as important to the future of the movement as candidates, well, running in New York or California, Maine, Alaska, anywhere around the nation, and in growing cases around the world. All of them need your support. And while there is a constant demand for money, we also need your support in terms of volunteering. In a few cases, if we have to volunteer, we will. But there's a need for candidates of this caliber to gain support everywhere. Our friends in the progressive movement, some fellow named Bernie, and before him, some guy named Barack, made a science out of getting contributions and voluntary efforts from around the nation, regardless of the actual geographic location of their race, their primary, their legislative issue. We need to do the same thing. And it's hard, it's challenging in these times for us to give of time when many of us are working more than one job. It's difficult to spare financial resources at a time when so many families are pressed. Small businesses have been attacked mercilessly by big government in terms of the pandemic. But somehow, despite all of that, we have to find a way to get it done. And the candidates that we've had on this show throughout 2021 and 2020, our profiles encourage in their ability to do just that. So let's give them a listen and give them our hearts, our minds, and if at all possible, maybe a little bit of the wallet too. One of the things we've done with this show is, as we go into the new year, is to broaden our reach. We don't want to just interview people. We want to amplify projects. We want to publicize fundraisers and conventions and Liberty weekends. So in that perspective, we've invited tonight a gentleman by the name of Fiore Troncone. He is from the great state of New Jersey. He is working very closely with Dan, the chair of the New Jersey LP, to do a fundraiser for the New Jersey LP. Fiore, listen, welcome to an hour with the Candidates Corner on LPTV. Thanks for joining us tonight. And tell us a little bit about this fun project that you're doing.
Thank you for having me. Basically, it just started off really as nothing. I just posted a picture of myself sipping coffee one morning, just titled it "Good Morning Mortals," and it just got a lot of attention. So I started doing it every day. And then I thought about it, and I thought, you know what, because I started this during, I think it was shortly after the Jorgensen campaign. I thought about it, and I was like, you know what, if these pictures are going to get attention, I might as well include segments of the libertarian platform. So I started doing that, and then I took it over to Instagram, and I started wearing. They're called silky shorts. They're also known as ranger panties. Um, and it started getting the attention of the gay community and women as well. And I would get messages from gay men in the community saying, "Thank you so much. I didn't even know that this party existed. I was a lifelong Democrat, but I hate the Democrats, and I don't want to vote for them anymore. Now I have an alternative." We all know the story.
Right.
So I approached Dan and I asked him, like, how would you feel about making a calendar based on the Daily Mug and turn it into a fundraiser? And he was all for it from the get-go.
Excellent. Excellent. So where can folks get this? I know we got to go online. We're going to show off what's the name of the site?
Proudlibertarian.com.
Proudlibertarian.com. And the proceeds from this go to the New Jersey Libertarian Party. Am I correct in that?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So what are some of the, besides the pictures, what are some of the, and it's tough because we don't have the calendar in front of us, but we've got some great screenshots of it. When you were doing this on Instagram, what were some of the statements or the principles or the issues that really caught the attention of the LGBTQIA community?
I mean, honestly, a lot of issues from across the platform. I mean, a lot of them agreed with the qualified immunity issue. A lot of them agreed with the free market stance.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of the basic libertarian principles that I think is pretty relevant throughout the entire platform.
Mm-hmm. And so it really wasn't, in one sense, it reached the community, but as is so often the case, the issues, the concerns are universal, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I mean,
and that's something that I try to explain to people when I'm discussing it with them online, is that the same issues that affect the gay community are the same issues that affect the Black community. They're the same issues that affect straight white males. Same issues that affect working women, stay-at-home moms. Like, these issues affect everybody,
right.
Whether anyone wants to admit it or not. At the end of the day, if things happen, it doesn't affect just one person, especially on a federal level.
Right. And that's a great message and a great conversation starter, because the assumption has been by a number of folks that when we reach out to a community, and it can be any community, it can be based on sexuality, it could be based on ethnicity, it could be based on religion, hell, it could be based on what football team you like. The concerns are universal. They're human concerns. The beauties of living in a government-free world where capitalism, instead of this warped corporatism that often takes place in America, capitalism really does become a mechanism by which an individual can reach their full human potential. And when you achieve that, you also break down barriers between communities. I'm old enough to remember the early days of an organization in New York City called ACT UP. I learned a lot simply by being on the sidelines and watching them use political theater, their ability to confront serious issues at that time. HIV was referred to as the gay plague, and people would talk about the gays. And then all of a sudden, once you realize that that person suffering from HIV might be someone on your bowling league, someone that you sit next to at work, someone you go to church with, then the barriers start to crumble. And that's true of virtually every group that exists. It's simply understanding the humanity across groups. And then we realize that the same concepts of liberty appeal to everyone, if not more so, particularly by a group of people that have been traditionally for generations marginalized and subjected, and even to this day, very often, particularly in the trans community, are subject to incredible violence. And so I'm curious, within the gay community at large, and I'm old enough, that's how I call it, right? But is the 2A issue, does that continue to grow in terms of controversy as well as interest?
What do you mean?
In terms of gun ownership? Yeah, in Rhode Island, where I live and work, there has always been that traditional, if you will, affiliation between, again, in my generation, we called it the LGBT community, and the Democratic Party, and as a result, a extreme desire perhaps out of just self-protection, to limit the use of guns. Has the LGBTQ community, are they more comfortable with having a conversation about guns and the Second Amendment?
Um, I mean, honestly, I really think it depends on the individual. I mean, I've met gay men who, like myself, go to the range. They enjoy shooting. They enjoy guns. And then you'll meet other men in the other, gay men who, want you to have like 5 rounds, and and believe that the forefathers wrote the Second Amendment for when the deer rise up.
Thank you for that.
So I mean, I always tell people, like, I don't like the whole demographic conversations, only because, like, I like to look at people as individuals. And I actually
Mhm.
just had a conversation with somebody about this on my own personal Facebook page today. I don't look at people as, LGBT, as, Muslim, Catholic, what have you. Just because I feel like once you start putting people into a demographic,
Right.
that's when, things kind of start to get muddy. I prefer to, just look at people as an individual and say, well, okay, you might be a gay man, but what do you think about the issue? I don't want to hear what the community thinks about the issue. I want to know what you think about the issue.
Excellent. No, and that's, as they say, that approach is libertarian AF, right? I mean, that's ultimately when we reach a society where just individual beliefs, behaviors, whatever, are not only tolerated, but they're embraced as a sign of individuality. Then we grow as a culture, as a society. We grow as a nation. We allow we instead of forcing people to the sidelines for any one of those issues, all of a sudden they become part of a vibrant economy and a vibrant national conversation.
Mhm.
And I personally convince everyone's got superpowers. It's our job to try and, particularly if you're a parent or not, try to figure out how to get those superpowers out to the forefront, and how to use those superpowers to grow personally and then bring people along with you. So let's do a quick run up on the fundraiser again. John, if you could bring
Mhm.
up that graphic again. Tell us the website where folks can go to. The proceeds from this will benefit the New Jersey Libertarian Party. Dan Kraus, the state chair, introduced me to Fiore. But give us where folks can find it, and when this will be available till.
It's available at proudlibertarian.com. I'm not quite sure exactly how long they plan on keeping it on the site. I need to message the page owner in regards to that. We're going to try and keep it up as long as possible. And also, if you wouldn't mind, I'd actually like to explain the calendar a little bit.
Yeah, please go right ahead.
All right. So basically, each image actually, while it does represent, the classic holidays for each month, as you see there, December is, Santa. February is a pair of pink silkies. July, I did the Second Amendment theme, so it's the cab my Jeep fired up behind me. Whoop, did we lose me?
Yeah, no, you're still, keep going. We're good.
Okay, there I am. Sorry, phone glitched out on me. But also with the traditional holidays, what we did was we actually included what we call libertarian holidays. So as you see with the December one, it's Santa, but that's also when Prohibition ended. So I'm pouring whiskey into a coffee mug. For February, Black History Month, I decided to incorporate a solo book. So we have that for the pictures, and also we included dates, and they're all color coded. So what we see as victories for liberty, they're highlighted with a little green bullet, and off to the side it explains what the bullet is for the date. We have gold bullets, which are birthdays, people, Jorgens. We include we've included put as a big few things like 9/11, of course, the beginning of Prohibition, and I believe we put Karl Marx's birthday as a big FU as well.
Okay. Fiore, you and I and John, we should have a drink on Karl Marx's birthday. How about that?
So we
Even if it's
included a little bit.
Oh. That's great. I think we're breaking up a little. Listen, Fiore, thank you for spearheading this. It's individuals coming up with great ideas like this that help fund the party operations, help again enhance perspectives, stimulate conversation, and just add a sense of fun to it. So, Fiore, thank you so very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right. We had a little rough at the end there with communication, but Fiore Troncone joining us from New Jersey, a special fundraiser for the New Jersey Libertarian Party. Folks, affiliates, candidates, whatever, if you're having a money bomb, a special event, please let us know, because we want to promote them to folks around the country. Hopefully give folks a chance to engage with that promotion or that event personally. Give folks an opportunity to support it financially. But just as importantly, we share out some fun projects, some best practices, and folks watching can then actually do it themselves or do a variation on it. That's the important role, I think, of LPTV moving forward. We're going to bring our two special guests on tonight. This has clearly been an era of a lot of, let's be blunt, a fair amount of internal strife. And that's going to be not uniquely libertarian. And politics, by definition, can be combative, competitive, shoulders thrown sometimes, hip checks. It can be kind of a mix between rugby, ice hockey, and ballet, depending on the day. So I had an opportunity to have a conversation unrelated to this with Evan, of course, who is the chair of the Libertarian Party of Indiana, which is really one of the premier affiliates in the nation. They have consistently generated great candidates. They have consistently increased membership. They have consistently supported their candidates. They have consistently advocated for freedom. And he was telling me about, of course, I'm going to bring up candidates all the time because we're always looking for candidates to join us. And he talked to me about the competition, if you will, for the endorsement, the nomination of the Libertarian Party of Indiana for an upcoming United States Senate seat. And I'm gonna turn the mic over to these gentlemen in just a minute. But ultimately, imagine this: two people running, maintaining an atmosphere of great candor, but at the same time, mutual support and respect. Imagine a campaign, and this to me is the real kicker, where the two principals in it have agreed that whoever shall be victorious for the nomination, the other candidate will actively engage and work in that other's campaign. Imagine a focus really on issues, not on who's identifying as what. And I just, in brief conversations I've had with both candidates, and of course, in longer conversations I've had with Mr. McMahon, the chair of Indiana, I continue to be impressed by, what do they call it? Hoosier hospitality, as it was defined to me early today. But imagine that, bringing that into the political arena. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Why don't you both take turns, just sort of introduce yourself and a little bit about your background. We'll just do this. We'll flip this back and forth. I want to take a second. I want to stress something. Tonight's conversation is not a debate. It's actually a conversation. We're going to talk not so much on why one is better than the other, but really focus on each individual's perspectives on what their legislative priorities are, what issues that they think are important to not only to the nation at large, but most importantly, to folks who are living in Indiana, their voters, their constituency. So again, joining us tonight is James Sceniak. He is running. Will Henry is running as well. Both of them are, again, great additions to the candidate community, and both of them bring outstanding talents and quite frankly, also work ethic to the party of Indiana. Will, why don't you go first, introduce yourself, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Pat. I'm Will Henry. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I've been advocating and an activist here in the state of Indiana for a number of years now. Over the last 5-6 years, I've been active at the Indiana State House and have been advocating on veterans issues and after the veterans issues, we were very successful at the State House in a number of these things addressed by the state legislature and using the organizations to come together and push for these initiatives together We had great success over a few years and saw a lot of these issues being taken care of as soon as we organized that effort at the State House. And after that, I got involved with the Indiana Normal. Cannabis was a big issue with the veterans too. I myself, as a disabled veteran, and use cannabis, and cannabis has helped me in a lot of ways. But unfortunately, here in the state of Indiana, it's illegal, and we have to um, either move away or go across state lines to get medicine and risk law enforcement and getting picked up for possession of cannabis here in the state of Indiana still. So there's still a big risk of that. So pushing at the state house and really trying to get those initiatives over the goal line. And it's been a real hard go over the last 5 or 6 years pushing this effort because there's been great resistance at the State House and at the executive levels at the State House to get support to do a lot of that. So over these last years, just pushing for veterans, pushing for cannabis, and just a lot of things here in the state of Indiana, and also got a chance to run with Donald Rainwater last year in the gubernatorial race as a lieutenant governor candidate. That was an amazing race. We did very well as a gubernatorial race, and very proud of Donald and the party and everyone on that campaign. It was an absolute great privilege and honor to be part of that campaign. And it was a great success. So over the last few years, I've been getting more involved with the Libertarian Party and trying to push the Libertarian message and the principles, and just trying to get Indiana initiatives over the goal line too. And over my talks and dealings with throughout the state of Indiana, the people just aren't being represented the way that they're supposed to be represented. And we need better representation. We need more freedoms protected. And we need, to ensure that people have their rights protected and their constitutional rights protected. So we need real representation in Washington, D.C. We need people to governing the government. And the government has been governing down to the individual. We've seen this very much over the last couple of years, that the government has really zeroed in on that individual level and trying to control us and take away our liberties. And a lot of that is being eroded, and we have to push back. And we have to expect those who are elected to push back in those capacities too. They have to challenge these agencies. They have to push back on these initiatives that the executives are putting forward. And we have to have good representation at the Capitol Hill, or we're going to get walked all over, and we can't accept that as a society, as a free society. And we need to protect our liberties and protect our freedoms.
Outstanding. James, give us your background. Tell us about that libertarian moment when you realized that the libertarian philosophy really fit well with you, some of your experience, and what your general priorities are.
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks for having me on, Mr. Ford. I appreciate it. We're going to bring a fresh, modern approach to Washington, D.C., and I'm excited for this approach. My background is a behavior therapist. I work primarily with kids with autism, and we do all kinds of things. We work with gross motor, fine motor skills. We work with social skills and behavior skills. So it's a really rewarding career, and I'm excited to take a lot of the things that I've learned in that career and take it to politics. As far as what we're going to do in Washington, D.C., we're going to focus on medical freedom, vet care, and fiscal responsibility. These are three very important issues to me. When you when you talked about the moment that you realize you're libertarian, I was disenfranchised with politics as a whole. I was frustrated because my old party that I associated with would promise, and never deliver. Even when they had the presidency and the House and the Senate, nothing would get done. So I became disenfranchised with politics. And then Hillary Clinton, Gary Johnson, and Trump were running. Absolutely despised Trump, absolutely despised Hillary Clinton, knew that neither one represented me. So I really took a look at Gary Johnson and saw what the platform was about, saw how it was presented, and I was really impressed. So that was my moment that I would say I became a small L. And I followed the party, and I actually advocated a lot on my Facebook for the party, but never really knew how to engage. So when the moment came to engage was during the Rainwater campaign, and I was super excited to see what they were doing. I saw the polls come out. I saw a well-presented message for the libertarians, and I knew that we were doing big things for Indiana. So at that moment, I decided to commit myself. So I became a national member. I'm a lifetime member in Indiana. And I also wanted to be involved locally for my local affiliate. So in Johnson County, we're doing big things. We have a great chair, Matt. He's doing awesome. And it's exciting to be a part of that growth and part of my pro growth campaign for the LPIN to build that base in Indiana so that we can continue to be competitive in elections and ultimately win elections in November.
Excellent. Let's just have sort of, like I said, just a conversation. And I think you'll respect each other's sort of time. I don't want to be constantly trying to flip the egg timer, as it were. One of the important focuses on this show is to promote an understanding of the that we have to match issues to the office. I early on, and I know that the folks at LP in terms of candidate training have been working overtime on this. You would have some really well-meaning folks running for, for General Assembly, say in a state, and they wanted to focus on ending war. And well, that's great. It's we absolutely support them in every method, but they're not going to be very effective in, say, the Indiana House. They might get a resolution passed at some point. Not going to have any real impact. For both of you, what is the one personal issue that you think that, and when I say personal, I mean, what is your campaign really promoting that can be effectively addressed at the United States Senate? Will, why don't you go first?
I think the biggest thing is what I had spoken on earlier is government governing government and not down to the individual and taking those freedoms and liberties away. In the last couple of years, with all of the pandemic and all of the effort to control down to the individual level, we've seen our freedoms and liberties erode away. And I think that we need representation in Capitol Hill to fight for those rights, to fight for those medical freedoms, to fight and push back against those agencies to be able to bring those issues to light and really challenge these issues.
And James?
Yeah, so my number one issue that I'm going around and promoting is vet care programs. So this is the idea that if you're familiar with a house savings account, it looks very similar to that, but it's for veterans. And we're wasting a lot of money. We can talk about the stale, intrusive, wasteful approach to Washington, D.C. right now concerning veterans and concerning the VA. But as I'm taking this message to Hoosiers, I'm realizing it's resonating, right? And the idea is that we can utilize resources that are already being through taxes already being in our government and giving individual freedom to their medical care. So the idea is that veterans fought for medical care. They fought for our freedoms. And why do they not have a free way for their medical care? So currently they have to go to a location that's designated for them. They have to choose a physician that is designated for them. And this isn't true medical freedom. So the idea is that through this house savings account, the wasted money that's going to the Veterans Affairs is now going to go directly to a house savings account and give the care that veterans deserve and ultimately be better for the taxpayer as well, because it'll reduce that waste.
Excellent. Will, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. The VA has tried a couple different ways to allow veterans to access medical care outside the VA with little success. It's very hard for people to get their medical bills taken care of using that program. And it would be a lot easier if veterans could just simply use the money that they give to the government each year for their individual care to be able to choose where they use that individual care. The VA, half the defense budget is the VA to take care of veterans. So a lot of money is being spent, and that's doctors and that's nurses, and that's also physical property. To maintain that physical property at the federal level costs a lot of money. To maintain some of these facilities, the bill is just massive. The energy it takes and whatnot to keep up the buildings and the surrounding property. So you can imagine how big the bill comes in to maintain those properties and to also pay each and every individual who works there, and also provide that care to veterans and sometimes their families if they're Purple Heart recipients or And in other ways, retirees and things like that, their spouses, they qualify for VA care too, in those capacities. So there's a lot of ways that we can cut costs and allow the veteran to make that choice, to allow them to decide whether they want to go to their local doctor or they want to go to that smaller clinic. But the VA itself is a massive entity, and it's socialized healthcare. And you hear a lot of veterans talking about how bad the VA is, and if you imagine a nation inside of socialized healthcare, that's what it would be like, trying to get care inside the VA. And it's very difficult for veterans sometimes to do that, because you're just a number. And it's very difficult to get to that individualized care. So a lot of people are finding that they can find that with their personal insurance and personal health care rather than having to go through the VA. So that idea is certainly taking off, and looking at the large number that we're spending, we got to start looking at shaving some of this stuff back, and that's that pragmatic libertarian approach that we need to be taking, to look at these ways that we can kind of shave off and try to take some control of that money back to the individual.
Excellent. James, let's talk about, and we'll have a conversation with both of you, obviously, talk about some of the unique roles of the United States Senate. One of them, obviously, is advise and consent in terms of appointing cabinet members, and possibly one of the most controversial in recent years is the ability to nominate and confirm presidential appointees to the United States Supreme Court. Again, your turn, James. What do you think is the role of the United States Supreme Court, and what, once you're elected senator, what type of litmus tests, as the parlance is typically referred to, but what type of approach do you have to analyzing a candidate for SCOTUS?
Yeah, definitely. The Supreme Court is very relevant, and it's been talked a lot. Trump was able to appoint quite a few to the Supreme Court, and so it's a very relevant issue. Democrats were trying to fight back and maybe even increase the Supreme Court. So, as a senator, it's very relevant and it's very current. The issues involve the balance and the power and the way our forefathers set up our country. So we have the three branches of government to help hold accountability to each branch, and the idea that as appointees, we're appointing judges for lifetime is a very serious obligation. The great part about appointing them for a lifetime is they're no longer obligated to any specific administration, so they can judge fairly in theory. So it's very important as a senator to be able to look at their qualifications for that. And ultimately, what I look at is how do they see what the forefathers wrote, and how do they interpret that? To me, I'm a constitutionalist. I believe that the forefathers wrote the Constitution how it's supposed to be written, and it's very relevant. And that's essentially what I would use as a method to see if they were qualified for the Supreme Court, as well as the history of what they've already done on the lower courts.
So would you consider yourself a strict constitutionalist?
When we talk about strict, I mean, I think that, we look at the Constitution and how it's intended. There's, I come from that background, yes.
Okay. And Will, your thoughts on SCOTUS?
We really need to push to get some of these nominations moving. That what positions need to be filled, and the three branches of government are very important. And judicial, we need to get this stuff moving. We need to get these people sat. We need to get these issues taken care of. We need to quit holding back on a lot of this stuff, and a lot of these cases need heard. We've been really putting limitations on a lot of this stuff that's important, and it's very hard to get things heard with the limitations to the Supreme Court with how many cases can be heard and such. So more on the panel there, I think that they could get a lot more things looked at and get a lot of things pushed through there.
And I'll throw this both out to both of you. The court continues to try and understand whether it's supposed to be an activist court, or, if you're a libertarian, we've obviously got a lot of friends who really want power to retain to the states. Is too much power given to the Supreme Court to effectively legislate from the bench?
Well, the Supreme Court wasn't designated for legislation. It was to interpret the law and make sure it was practiced fairly. And so when they do legislate, obviously that's too much power. That goes against that checks and balances that was intended by our forefathers. So it is a concern, and it needs to be addressed. I do think that there is a place for the Supreme Court, but there's also the checks and balances that need to happen.
And Will?
Absolutely, legislating from the bench is, and it's some of that cross contamination that we've seen lately, where the executive has been lent some of this legislative power to make some of these emergency decisions. A lot of this stuff is leaching over into some of these other branches, and it's getting kind of scary and it's getting kind of hairy. We need to get in there and kind of pull those strings apart and get them separated the way that they need to be.
Folks, if you're just joining us, James Sceniak and Will Henry, both from the great state of Indiana, we're engaging in Hoosier hospitality here tonight, in the sense that both are running to win the nomination from Indiana Libertarian Party to run for the United States Senate. Feel free, both of you, to jump in this. What is it? This is interesting to me because this is occurring at the convention level. Do you have a lot of other competition in Indiana to run from multiple parties for the same seat? Feel free, Will, James, whatever.
Not that I can think. I mean, the primaries, I'm not sure what the Republicans are exactly planning for the primaries or the Democrats, if anyone's planning to challenge some of those folks. I know a lot of folks are, there's a couple folks I've heard trying to get signatures to push back on the Republican Todd Young, an independent or a Republican who's trying to get these signatures on his own throughout the state. And there are folks like that trying to get in on some of those races in that capacity.
But are Indiana libertarians, do you have other instances where you have got multiple libertarians seeking a nomination?
Oh, no, not that I know of, not in the Libertarian Party.
Okay. So this is pretty unique. Foreign policy is obviously a key component, if you will, of the portfolio of any United States senator. From each of your perspectives, and James, why don't you take this one first? What do you see as being the single most important change that must take place in United States foreign policy right now?
So, I mean, we need a reduction of our affairs overseas. And so, we're a pro-peace party. And ultimately, we need to stop policing other countries. That's not our role, and that's not what we're designated to do. So the idea is that we can reduce that military involvement overseas, and it'll actually help our veterans in the long term. And the idea is that we do need a military to keep the peace, but let's be keeping peace instead of policing.
And how about you, Will? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely, reduce that footprint overseas. A lot of the Afghanistan drawdown, pulling out really fast, allowing the Taliban to kind of infiltrate those areas and pull right back to where they were. There was a lot of lessons learned that we had there. I was a journalist in the Army over in Afghanistan. I saw a lot of what was happening. We were training Afghan National Police and Afghan National Army. So we put a lot of money into that country. And it was also physical buildings, and it was training these individuals to take over when it was time to take over. And when it was, kind of put on them so suddenly in this exit that we had, that really put stress on their forces and allowed the Taliban to just kind of slide right in and take over. In a lot of capacities, the Taliban probably never even left. So overseas policies right now, reducing that footprint is always important, and bringing those troops back home. We've got soldiers in countries all over the place around the world and bases, and that stuff costs money, and it costs money to maintain those facilities and feed those individuals and pay for them and their work that they're doing overseas. And we really need to focus on America. We need to focus on some of these things that our country needs, and to really start to draw back and reduce the cost of a lot of things in a lot of ways, and really being really being choosy on what we're spending our tax dollars on overseas. We want to make sure that the programs and the things that we're doing are important and they're effective, and they're also cost effective and not too much dollars.
James, your thought?
On, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, no. Well, I want to keep things moving here. Let's jump on to what is the single biggest foreign policy challenge of, well, December 17th, 2021. Right now, you've got, by some estimates, and as many as 100,000 Russian troops on the border of the Ukraine. Um, Russia is demanding a fundamental realignment and adjustment, if you will, the relationship between NATO and, if you're my age, you still refer to it as the USSR, Soviet Workers' Paradise. Um, how does America interact
So yeah,
with NATO? Go ahead,
um,
buddy.
it's a great question. As a libertarian, we believe in the NAP, which is the non-aggression principle, and the idea is that we'll never aggress. So again, we're the party of pro-peace, and the time to intervene is when our freedoms are being attacked. And so when we look at other countries and what they're doing, we're aware, we understand what they're doing, and we're ready to defend ourselves. But our position needs to be defense, and again, not the aggressors and not the policing of the world.
So, and I'm going to throw the same challenge out to your counterpart, James. Do we, as members of NATO, should we? Well, first of all, let's be blunt. Should we be backing away from NATO? And we have a responsibility, if you will, to react to people in that alliance. How do we manage that in a situation like that? What are your thoughts?
Often, we look at, and they really haven't done what they're going to say. America uh, often becomes, again, the police officer, the one that is doing all the work of enforcing these policies in all these countries. And we really need that reduction. We need to focus on our home issues and what's happening in America and stop focusing on policing and focus what is important to Americans and what is important to Hoosiers. And ultimately, NATO is another wasted government program that we need to remove.
And I'll turn it over to you now, Will. What are your thoughts on NATO, Ukraine? Again, this is the stuff of the Senate, if you will.
I think at the very least we need to be at an equal contribution to a lot of other countries. I think our contribution to NATO is much more than probably what it should be. And our contribution of manpower to some of these initiatives are also much more than they should be. So, kind of like I said before, reducing the amount of money we have, are investing into that effort. We need to equalize ourselves if we're going to still continue to be part of that. And we need to pay our equal share, and not more than what other countries are paying too. We need to make sure that we're putting in an equal effort into that organization if we're an equal part of that organization. We don't need to be driving the initiatives. We don't need to be pushing anything. We need to be aware. We need to be observant, and we need to be diplomatic in all of the efforts that we move forward. We need to be very diplomatic in what we do. We need to understand what is happening and understand, just the general information of whatever is happening around the world. So Ukraine and Russia right now, things are getting hot. Things have been hot for a while over there. And this is not new tension. This is a tension that is rebirthing again. We're just, a lot of people are waiting to see what happens in this next chapter of this Ukraine and Russia conflict.
Mm-hmm. An extension of our national foreign policy has become our failed drug policy here in the United States. And this is sort of I think it'll be an easy one for you guys, but I'd love to have both of you sort of just dwell on the specifics. And anyone who actually pays attention to Central American and Latin American politics understands that narcoterrorism is a fundamental mover, both in people economies and foreign policy. What should the United States do in order to ease tensions, if you will, within Central and Latin America, to create, to, if you will, to minimize the pressures that create a lot of this migration that's taking place? And so what would your approach, and we'll go with James first, what would your approach be towards foreign policy, narco-terrorism, and related issues?
Right. So we're all about individual freedom, and we're all about the idea that that freedom is for everybody. So when we're talking about, you're bringing up immigration, the idea is that we need opportunities for everybody to have that freedom, and we need easier ways for immigration to happen across borders. As far as the war on drugs, and we understand it's a failed war. So the idea is that if we can work on some of these issues, there'll not be issues overseas, or in this case, South America. But yeah, we definitely need better immigration policies so that we can bring in more people to have more freedoms.
And Will, what are your thoughts on foreign policy, addiction, the war on drugs?
Well, given that if you take away the money and the power away from the drug trade, you take away everything that the drug trade has to create violence. And if you give people back the choice whether or not they put a substance in their own body, you take away that money making capability for that entity too. And people discover that maybe that substance isn't for them, and those type of things, and they try to get to the root cause of whatever their issue is in substance abuse too. But really taking the power away from these individuals, take their money away, and they don't have any power, and they're not attacking their community, they're not attacking each other over turf, they're not doing these type of things. So the drug war itself is costing a lot, and it's costing even more because the impact is in these nearby countries where these people have to flee and seek refuge here in the United States to seek a free life and move forward in a free way. And it's very disheartening to see these people having to move their whole lives from these countries that are impacted in this fashion. And uproot and try to seek refuge anywhere in the world to try to seek a better life, because their life is just that terrible in that location. So I think, yes, ending the drug war altogether, it will impact a lot of that stuff, and it hits them right in the wallet, and they have no power and capability to do some of these terrible things that they're doing. And that,
I'm going to bring up sort of a wild card issue, and if you're not familiar with it, this is not a contest. This is a conversation. So there's no points against you, but I think it's a uniquely federal/state issue, and that's the conversation about defending the Guard. Are either of you familiar with that ongoing debate? And as far as essentially immunizing state National Guards from being conscripted, by my words, by the federal government and defending their position as really defending internal Indiana issues. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Indiana actually has one of the largest National Guards. And as far as your question, I believe that there is a place for protection and using it federally. We've seen that across the United States. We often use our National Guards, and this is nothing new, but we need to use it for peace. And that's the issue that we have when it comes to National Guard. Are we using our members and our military for peace? And when we go back to this principle, I think we'll not have these issues that you're discussing.
Right. And I just want to throw in before I turn it over to Will, there's at least studies and anecdotal reports focus on really the Midwestern support of our armed services, that there are states in the Midwest and in the industrial belt, as some call it, that have a disproportionate support of our armed services, and Indiana appears to be one of them. Will, what's your thoughts? on defending the Guard and keeping them in their lane for local support.
Yeah, and we depend on, the National Guard too, and that's written into, the state constitution and things like that to maintain our militia. And the National Guard is utilized a lot of ways by the federal government too, in that capacity. And I think that's probably what those folks are specifically talking about is basically the lending our soldiers and airmen out to the active component capacity. When I was in the National Guard, I actually served, like 7 of my 9.5 years on active duty time, and because the uptick in active duty was so high during that time, and the Afghanistan war was really at its peak, and Iraq was still going on, and they were really utilizing the Indiana National Guard quite a bit. They were drawing from the Indiana National Guard to send overseas, and a lot of these units saw a lot of action overseas in these initial conflicts. And a lot of contribution was given by these individuals overseas, and they lost a lot, and they fought a lot. And the National Guard at the local level is very important. I've seen the National Guard respond to emergencies throughout the state here in Indiana, to tornadoes, to floods, to snow emergencies even. I've seen the National Guard do a lot of good things here in the state, and they've helped in a lot of capacities during those state emergencies. And they're always ready, always there, and that's their motto, and that's always true. The National Guard's utilization is very important, and I think that maintaining that is important to the state capacity to be able to perform in these emergency situations that we need to perform in.
Excellent. Last question, and then I'm going to give you folks a chance to do 2 things each. If you will, to make a statement to Indiana and to the Libertarian Nation at large, who might hear this tonight and/or in the future. By the way, this show remains in perpetuity on the Libertarian Party Facebook page as well as the LPTV page. And I'm also going to give you both an opportunity to engage in what we lovingly refer to here as shameless self-promotion. So James, why don't you go first in this respect? The banking oversight, a great deal of that takes place in the United States Senate, and one could argue that our current president was complicit in a lot of the abuses and the machinations of the banksters, as we like to say here in Rhode Island, during his storied career in the United States Senate. And just as an aside, I watched both the Democratic and the Republican, contest from a seat firmly as a member of the Joe Jorgensen campaign, and I've been disgusted by the lack of media coverage on just the kind of roles that Joe Biden, because he's the nicer guy, he's the gentle Grandpa Joe or crazy Uncle Joe, depending on who you talk to, in fundamental roles in many of the banking crises. So, when it comes to banking, I'll make it kind of easy. Is there any bank that's too big to fail? And should we be limiting banks as to what markets that they can engage in? And James, you've been going first, and then Will, you follow up after that.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate the question. A lot of this goes back to fiscal responsibility and accountability within government and how we regulate our banking system. And then it also is a very real issue with inflation and how we're handling that fiscal responsibility. So in regards to the banking, is there ever a bank that's too big to fail? My answer is always, if something's failing, it's failing, you let it fail. There's a reason it fails, and we have to find a solution for that. And I believe that within competition, we'll always see another bank succeed in the area that bank failed. So when we talk about fiscal responsibility and accountability coming back to the government, there is regulations that need to happen. We reduce the government's role in those regulations when it comes to how the bank operates, but we also let the free market regulate it as well. So definitely there is a role for the government and there's a role for the free market in this issue. but we definitely need to see fiscal responsibility back in Washington, D.C., because their wasteful approach to banking right now is just not working for Hoosiers, and it's not working for America.
Will, what are your thoughts?
We're regulating ourselves to death is what we're doing, and we need to allow businesses to fail if they're going to fail. We need to quit bailing folks out. We need to quit bailing corporations out. We need to let businesses be business and let it be organic, and what happens happens. We can't save the world. We can't bail everybody out, and banking is one of those aspects that, look, if they're gonna dominate, they're going to dominate. And why are we limiting what currencies and what capacities? I mean, cryptocurrency is a huge a huge issue right now, and folks are buying a lot of cryptocurrency and buying stake into possible monetary reserves that could be worth more than $1 someday. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in the financial world right now. There's a lot of interesting things happening in the banking world right now, and I think we're doing more harm by regulating ourselves out, and we need to do a little bit less regulations and allow companies and corporations to do what they need to do and fail if they need to fail.
Excellent. Well, we're going to flip the order a little bit. As I mentioned, I'd love to give you guys each 2 or 3 minutes to kind of look at the camera and give a stump speech, if you will, to Libertarian Party members, not just around the nation, but of course to the folks in Indiana who ultimately will decide at convention who the nominee is going to be. And then take a moment and engage in, as we call it, shameless self-promotion. Tell people where they, you could be thoroughly brazen here. We're libertarians, right? So tell them exactly what you need, where you need the do-re-mi, what volunteer help you need. And then I'm going to give you a little twist. At the end of it, I'd love you to say what role you would like to play, as promised, in the other's campaign if your opponent should reign victorious. So I think what we're going to do is flip it. I think was James, Will, why don't you go first? Because I think James has been leading off for most of the show. My fault, by the way.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, I want people to realize that they need to be represented in Washington, D.C. Their rights and their freedoms need to be protected in Washington, D.C. Government needs to get back to governing government. Government needs to get out of your life as an individual. You need to have your individual rights protected, and you need to have your liberties and freedoms protected. And I would do that for you in Washington, D.C. I hope to earn the nomination at the state convention in March, and hope to see a lot of extra people there, not normally associated with the Libertarian Party, because what we've been doing out in the communities is rallying people to the Libertarian Party as well. And we're getting people to look at the Libertarian Party in a different capacity and in a different way. And that's really what the effort is all about. Is pulling people and gravitating them toward the Libertarian Party and giving them those principles and those messages. And a lot of people just don't realize that they're libertarian. And that's an amazing thing to see and to be part of out there in the community and to see happening. And I want a lot of people to understand that they need to be represented in the correct capacity. And those senators and representatives at Capitol Hill need to be looking at the government agencies, and they need to be looking at the government organizations to do better, and they need to be demanding that they do better. WilliamHenry.us, you can find more information about me there. Also at Facebook.com/Will4US, so Will for Us. You can find me there as well. Instagram, Twitter, and we're getting a lot of communications and messaging efforts on the way, and a lot more things are going to be coming around the new year. So I'm very happy to be part of this effort and to move forward with the U.S. Senate candidacy and to push that libertarian message and those principles forward as best as possible.
And what role would you like to play should James be victorious? You guys have, pinky sweared, right? You've done the secret handshake. You've got the Dakota ring. All right. What role would you, or how would you assist James in his campaign should he win?
I would be willing to offer my efforts for a communications position. in the campaign. Absolutely help with any type of media coordination, writing, speech preparation, and any public speaking issues.
Excellent. All right, James, you're up on the hot seat now. Give us your best. Uh, Shamelessly self-promote yourself, and then what role would you play in helping Will become the first Libertarian United States Senator?
Yeah, definitely. This is exciting times for the LPIN, exciting times to run for Senate. With a fresh, modern approach to Washington, D.C., we're going to take our message all across Indiana to all Hoosiers. I've already done this since July. I've gone up to Valpo. I've gone up down to Evansville. I've gone to my hometown, which is in Elkhart County, Goshen. And the message is that we are growing. It's a pro-growth message for the LPIN. It's building that base, and it's continuing to let voters realize that there is a third option. And we're not even a third option anymore. We are a viable party. We're going to win in November, and we're going to win the Senate race. So with that, uh, my pro-growth campaign is important for the LPIN. It's important to grow your county affiliates, and I've been working with individuals all across Indiana, including counties and including candidates. So I'm excited to get behind that effort, and I'm excited to get behind Indiana in that effort. I also look at how we volunteer. I love going to Hamilton County and volunteering with the food banks. I appreciated Shelby County going and doing their chili. So there's been a lot of events that have been incredible to be a part of, and that pro growth that I have seen is amazing. So I've been looking at the best practices all across Indiana, and I'm wanting to take those best practices and utilize them across our counties so that we know how to grow our platform better. Specifically, what I'm going to do for Hoosiers, we're going to talk about that medical freedom that's so important. We're going to talk about how government should stay out of our bodies and how that those substances should not be mandated. We're going to talk about vet care and for how we've neglected veterans far too long. We're going to fix that issue, and then fiscal responsibility, right? So we've talked about the spending budgets, and they keep passing and passing. But the reality is, at this point, it's not even a budget; it's a spending spree. So I want you to consider voting for me for the nomination for U.S. Senator come March, and I'm excited for November, and I'm excited to get against Todd Young. When we talk about the discussion of what I would do for the other candidate, it's exactly what I'm doing right now. It doesn't matter if I'm wearing a James Sceniak for Senate shirt. It doesn't matter if I'm wearing a William Henry shirt or even a Jeff Moore shirt for Secretary of State or just an LPIN shirt. I'm going to continue to help the pro growth. I'm going to continue to help Indiana to show that voters can trust us as a party and can look forward to seeing us win in November. If you want to help out my campaign, sceniacforsenate.com. We got our donating link up, and we're starting that fundraising process. It is expensive to travel all across, and inflation makes that even worse. So gas prices are absolutely ridiculous right now. But we are making a difference, and I'm excited to bring that difference to voters. Thank you for having me on the show.
And last question, I gotta pin you down on this. Should Mr. Henry reign victorious, what role would you like to play in his campaign based on, again, the handshake agreement that you gentlemen, both of you, and both of you are gentlemen, have to support the winner?
Yeah, definitely. So again, that's if I'm wearing a William Henry shirt, it's exactly what I'm doing now. It's going to go around and getting people and getting the vote out for William Henry. So I'm excited that we have such great candidates all across, and including William Henry as an opponent. And I will get that vote out and allow people to see us as a viable party.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, congratulations to both of you. As I've told other candidates, and this is, a relative unique situation, but both of you are trailblazers because as the party continues to grow, as candidates arise, there is going to be competition for nominations. And I'm inspired by, the obvious respect that both of you have for each other, the high level conversations you're willing to have, even in a brief format like this, your obvious affection, love, and respect for everything that liberty entails. Quite frankly, the Libertarian Party of Indiana is blessed to have you both. And I hope this is one of those campaigns that comes down to the last minute. It's a nail biter, and then people are so fired up by your example in working together collegially that then they literally take to the streets of Indiana, from Bloomington to Indianapolis, even that crazy little town in southern Indiana, which is surrounded by, what is it, a couple hundred miles of armaments or whatever it is going on down there. You know, there's Indiana's a pretty,
Atterbury.
yeah, and Indiana's a pretty wild place. That's all I'm just gonna say. You may look quiet, but there's some crazy stuff going on there. Again, generally, much respect for both of you. You know, we one of the mantras of this show is that, short of serving in our nation's defense, running for public office is, quite frankly, the most patriotic act that an American can take. The financial commitment, the time commitment, time away from your family, the type of voluntarism that took place in your run up to these candidacies, the type of just the sheer work ethic you have to campaign in a state that's as large as and as complicated and as nuanced as Indiana is nothing short than a profile in courage. And to be willing to make that investment in an emerging political organization for whom, quite frankly, the ideas of independence and personal recognition and body autonomy and all of that we take for granted is astonishingly enough in the year 2021 considered controversial by people. And to be willing to embrace that controversy head on is just a testament to both of your character. So much love and support to both of you. And I
Thanks
look
so much,
forward.
Pat.
And please stay in touch, regardless of who wins. Please stay in touch, because we want to have you on again in a few months to give us an update how things are going. And you know, between the rainwater campaign, your campaign, and a number of efforts taking place across Indiana, you folks continue to be one of the leaders in the movement nationally. And so much respect as well to Evan McMahon and his counterparts around the state for doing the work that they're doing.
Thanks so much, Pat.
Thanks for having us on. Appreciated the conversation.
Absolutely. I want to take a moment, if you will, before we sign off for the night. There is an ongoing situation in Kentucky. It's interesting to see how the news cycle impacts on tragedies. Of course, we're talking about the tornadoes that sat down in Western Kentucky. It seems like an eternity ago in the news cycle, but it was just a week ago. And we've got libertarians who are boots on the ground, who continue to deliver needed goods and services from across the state out to Western Kentucky. The party itself is, I think the technical term is yeoman-like efforts. So I want to refresh, if you will, the exactly where you can send money. Right, and we're going to update Monday night on the, if you will. Folks are a little bit under the weather. They've been out in the elements all week, literally working around the clock in their community. But we want to give you an idea how you can send money. And
obviously,
as tragedies like these unfold, you go from a reaction and a relief and a recovery stage to really rebuilding. And you can see the green shoots of rebuilding already taking place. And so the needs for them continue to transition. So if you can send money, even a little bit, give till it hurts, as we like to say, but at the same time, donations, whether it be for a candidate or in this case, helping an entire community recover, are a reflection on the movement. It shows us that we embrace the notion, if you will, of volunteerism, that we understand that if we are going to agitate and aggressively work towards the removal of government from what we call quote unquote charity and rely on private charity, that, well, times like this, we have to step up a little bit. We have to make it more than a conversation point. So if you can send a few dollars, these are going to go all towards products and tools and equipment that are going to be used in the recovery process for homeowners around Western Kentucky. It's truckerboyfreedom@gmail.com. And a Cash App is $Browns fan 2022. And the Venmo, by the way, is intentionally misspelled because somebody else got tornado relief. So it's Tornado LEIF. $5, $10, $1. If you can do more, great. Understand that not only are you helping a community rebuild, you're also building the concept that is up to community to support each other that a government that would, quote unquote, break your leg and then look for, if you will, congratulations on them affording you crutches is not the answer going forward. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. What makes America great is the sense of shared community. So please give them a little bit of help. James Tolerant, we hope that he will be on our show on Monday night, and we'll continue to feature their efforts, quite frankly, until they're done. And it looks like you got a pretty dedicated crew in Kentucky. And quite frankly, they serve as an example to all of us. Folks, you've been listening to Candidates Corner on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Bilyeu serving as chair. John Gapso has always been on the big board after a full and rewarding day, helping Christmas dreams come true. He finds himself driving pell-mell a trail of both Massachusetts and Rhode Island law enforcement following him so he can get here on time to start the show. I am your host, Pat Ford. It is a singular honor to enter the field of political battle with all of you. I personally will be traveling to a number of conventions across the Northeast and hopefully a few beyond as we approach convention season to spread the mission of candidate support, to elevate our candidates to national prominence, to aid, hopefully in some small way, in their development, and to continue into the new year to embrace and amplify our libertarian philosophy. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you Monday night.